Hey everyone, it's Laurel Beard and welcome to another video today. I'm going to be showcasing a watercolored Valentine's Day card using some Essential by Ellen products. I'm going to be using the Laurel Stag, which was named after me. No, I'm kidding. No, it was. No, I'm kidding. And some other stamps and do some watercoloring. And here are two of the products I'm going to be using. I'm going to pull in a third in the video here. So this is the adorable Stag. And I'm going to be die cutting it using some Essential by Ellen craft board. It's this super thick, like craft board. It makes it thicker. Your die cut's thicker. Instead of layering up like 10, 15 just to get some thickness, you can use this by itself, which is what I'm going to be doing here, or you can layer just a couple, one on top of the other. It's just a more durable thickness for those little delicate die cuts that are really just tough to layer if you want some dimension on your card. I'm going to be using these watercolors. These are my favorite watercolors. These are the Gonze watercolors. All of the supplies will be linked below in the YouTube description as well as over on my blog, by the way, including exact colors and all that stuff in case you're interested. So I'm just, I didn't have a bucket of water and I was too lazy to go get some, so I just sprayed some water onto my craft sheet there and also onto my cardstock. And then I'm just pulling in some different color reds from the watercolor palette over there. It doesn't look all that pretty right now. Usually when you apply watercolor, or I find when I apply watercolor, it never looks pretty as you put it down. But as it dries and as the water moves all the watercolors around, it just looks better. So it's almost like the uglier it looks going down, the more beautiful it's going to be. I don't know. So I'm pulling in different colors, different hues. I think I'm using a total of 3. And again, that is some watercolor cardstock by Tim Holtz, by the way. I do strongly recommend that you use watercolor paper for this technique. Then I've just sprayed it with water a little bit more, and I'm just kind of moving my cardstock around to get some drips going. Another option would be spraying it with some kind of Perfect Pearls mist, and you actually have the nice watercolor in with some shine. That's an option as well, too. But I'm just moving my cardstock around. I really wanted some of those drip lines. I'm going to dab up a little bit of that petal right there. I wasn't liking how heavy it was. And then just move it around just a little bit more. And then I'm going to set it off to the side to dry. So you'll never know what it's going to look like until you just play around. So I'm like, okay, that's good. I better leave it alone and let it dry before I mess it up. So I love these watercolors. I have the 36 count. They also have a 24 count and a smaller count than that. I can't remember which one, but I'll link them all up in the blog, but that's an option there. So now I'm going to take some Versamark and I'm just going to smush it onto my craft board die cut there with the Laurel Stag, and then I'm going to add some liquid platinum embossing powder. I absolutely love this embossing powder. It goes with everything. It's definitely one of my favorites. That's why it has its dedicated little tub here. And I'm just going to dip my die cut into the tub of embossing powder, and then I'm going to heat set it with my heat tool there. This is like magic. Once you can just see how it melts instantly. The key to using a heat gun is to give it, blow it off into the air for about 10 seconds so it gets good and hot before you apply it to your project. The heat gun that I use is the Milwaukee heat tool. I absolutely love it. So this is a Copic multi-liner. It's a 0.5, and I wanted to create a little doodle, little hand-drawn doodle looking frame here. I didn't want it to be even. I did not pull out a ruler. I am purposely going squiggly. You could get a ruler and draw a really straight frame if you want. I just wanted a doodly look. I don't know why. So again, this was the 0.5 Copic multi-liner there. And now it's time to start assembling the project. I never work off of sketches. I just go with the flow. I go with inspiration I see from you guys, from Pinterest, Google. I do a lot of Googling sometimes to get a little jump start. So I'm going to put some of that thread, that's some white thread, behind my Stag there. So what I did was I put a little bit of adhesive on the back of that Stag, and then I put one end of the floss thread, whatever this is, like sewing thread almost, and then I'm just kind of wrapping it around, just whatever. I just want to make sure it's all like looks okay and is all like contained up in the top right hand corner. So I'm just kind of pulling everything together, and then I'm going to secure that Stag down, making sure the other end now meets behind the Stag. So I started with one end, moved all the thread around. Now I've got the other end behind that Stag, and then I'm going to off camera I'm going to dab some glossy accents behind that Stag because I don't want it moving. I don't want my thread coming out of place or anything like that. So I did do that off of camera. So here is the other stamp set I'm pulling into the mix here. And all of the supplies will be linked below. This is a great stamp set, but don't underestimate, just because it was a Christmas release doesn't mean that you can only use these stamps around Christmas. These are very versatile stamps that I've pulled out here, and I'm going to be using the Love from this particular stamp set. It's called Brushstroke Christmas. So I'm going to go ahead and take my little anti-static tool there. It just puts down some powder. I don't want my embossing powder sticking to where I don't want it. So I'm going to ink up that Love with some Versamark ink again, and then I'm going to heat set that again with some liquid platinum embossing powder, which I already said this, but it goes with everything, I swear. So I'm going to sprinkle it on there. Even though I used the anti-static tool, some embossing powder did get where I didn't want it to be. When that happens, just grab a dry paintbrush and wipe it away. Brush it away. It doesn't need to be there, so it needs to go away. So that's what I'm going to do here on camera at some point. Hello. There. So I'm just going to wipe it away with my paintbrush. And then I'm going to go ahead and heat set that with my heat tool there. It's like magic. I just love it. I usually go in behind as well to help the warping of the paper. This paper is already a little bit wrinkled because of the watercoloring that we did. So I'll tell you how I kind of flatten that out in a minute. So now we're going to go ahead and pull this card together. And I've grabbed the heart from this Cozy Christmas stamp set. And I've got two different colors of Mama Elephant pigment inks. I've got Moonlight, which is the lighter color there on the left, and then Dark Storm, which is the darker color. And I decided to use pigment inks because I'm going to sprinkle some embossing powder over the top of these hearts so they shine. So I thought putting in some gray hearts, not traditional, normally hearts are red, sometimes pink. Normally you don't see gray hearts, but I thought it would tie in nicely with the black doodle frame that I drew, and also I'm going to adhere this to a black card base. So I just, whatever. Obviously if you don't like black hearts, hey, or gray hearts rather, these are gray, then, you know, whatever. Give yourself an orange heart if you want. That's what I say. So I'm just kind of scattering these little hearts around. You could also use sequins if you wanted to as an option. Me and sequins typically don't get along. I have a ton of them, but whatever. They hate me. They really do. I love them. They're so pretty, and I will challenge myself to get those sequins to like me. I'm going to. It's going to happen. 2015 is the year, people, for sequins and me to get along. So this is some Judikins Judikins Iridescent Embossing Powder, something like that. Judikins Iridescent Embossing Powder, I think is what it's called. And this puts on a nice layer of shine there. So I've already gone ahead and sprinkled that on there. Then I'm going to heat set that, and you get this nice subtle shine over all those hearts. And because I used a pigment ink and worked fairly quickly, the embossing powder stuck to the pigment ink because pigment ink stays wet longer. So I was able to do some quick embossing powder. And now I've got some nice sparkly hearts. So what I did to flatten down this card was I ironed it. I put it in between two sheets of copy paper, and I took my craft iron, I got a cheap iron off of Amazon, and I ironed it down to flatten it out. And then I put a ton of adhesive on the back because that is some textured watercolored cardstock there. Then I'm going to adhere it down to a black card base, and that is the card. That is it. We are done. I like the hints of the black and the grays. I really do. I love that Stag. I love the watercolored. I love the embossing powder. I love the font Love. These are the sets I used here. And I just love the Essentials by Ellen line. I'm looking forward to a future line soon, I hope. So thanks so much for watching. Again, all the supplies are listed below if you're interested, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day.